back to another episode of Meet the Creatives. I am here with the Senior Director and Global Head of Design of the Hershey's Chocolate Company, Ron Burrage. Ron, thanks for coming on today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is so exciting. I know that we had talked about it briefly, but I actually discovered Ron in one of those kind of eureka, life-changing moments. I was listening to, I remember it well, I was in my friend Thomas's driveway, and Thomas is always, 45 minutes to an hour late for everything.
Nice.
And I was listening to your podcast. I was looking at the sunroof on a beautiful summer day, and I was so kind of moved to hear your story and, you're trying to find jobs and your persistence in trying to find a job and, working for Disney and being close to Disney. So I'm going to put the podcast in the comments section below. As usual, it's a fantastic podcast because Debbie Millman was on it. But I remember that moment well. And from that moment forward, I was like, I want to meet this guy. So it's so cool to have you on. So thanks for being here, Ron.
Thanks for having me on. And thanks for reaching out.
Let's start from the beginning of your career. You were from 1997 to 1998. You were the design and production manager at Darden Restaurants.
Before I was with Darden, I was with a series of agencies. I actually started my career doing design for a bank in South Florida.
Right.
Called American Savings and Loan. They don't exist anymore, unfortunately. It was a great job. And then I moved from that into an agency, and I was with an agency for several years before I moved to Darden in Orlando. But really the move to Darden, while I love the Olive Garden, and I'm Italian, as you can tell, not really, I am, I really wanted to be closer to Disney because I have this lifelong infatuation with the Disney company. And, even well before my professional career started, like every paper I wrote in school was about Walt Disney. Every art project somehow was Disney related.
You'd find a way.
I find a way, right? I was obsessed with Mary Blair, who's an illustrator, an amazing designer that worked for Disney. And so I just wanted to work for Disney. So I thought, well, I'm going to move to Orlando, right? I was in Florida, so it's not like I moved from...
It's not a stretch.
Too far away. But I moved to Orlando, and I got this amazing job with Darden Restaurants, working for the Olive Garden. And I was their traffic and production manager. At the time, they didn't really call the group design. It turned to design while I was there, but it was a short stretch because I happened to go to print a menu for the Olive Garden one night, and I met who would become my future boss at Disney. And we were joking one night. It was a late night press run, and I was super tired. This was like back when the Olive Garden has a ton of restaurants,
right.
And they're different like menu items in different parts of the country. You have liquor laws in parts of the country where you can't have alcohol on a menu. So we were just there for a long time printing like hundreds of versions of the menu.
Right.
Anyway, so I'm printing, I'm delirious, smelling, printer fumes, which
I know the feeling.
I love. I actually went on a tour of a print shop a few weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my God, I missed the smell.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. But I was printing some menus, and someone was there printing a job for Disney, and I was joking. I'm like, oh my God, I've applied for you guys, forever. You don't even reply. I get like little thank you cards in the mail when people would act before
the
email.
magic of Disney you mentioned. I thought that was so funny.
And thank you for your interest in the magic of Disney at this time.
Yeah.
There's another candidate whose qualifications meet our needs better. But anyway, I used to say I could wallpaper a bathroom with all the cards I got. But anyway, that was my introduction to Disney. And she's like, oh, here, switch, cards. And I lucked out. I mean, it got me an interview. I went in, I showed my portfolio. I thought, oh, there's no way in a million years they're going to hire me.
Right.
And they did. And best time of my life. I loved working for them.
What is it about Disney in particular that, because you got a chance to work there and see, behind the scenes and kind of have an idea of how the whole thing kind of plays out. But what is it that makes Disney so special in comparison to other brands?
Well, I think it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and different things for different people. Right. So, my personal experience with Disney is, I grew up in South Florida. My family, we didn't have like a ton of money, and our vacations typically were a couple of days going to Disney. And so that's how I experienced Disney, and it was something that I remember doing with my brothers and sisters and my mom, and a lot of like magic memories that really were created in my life there. And it's those scent, audible,
right,
edible, all of the things coming together. Like I still can walk into a store in the mall and say, oh my god, I just smelled Disney. Like that's so weird, that sensory element of it.
Yeah.
But so much of it for me was kind of like that escape. That's what vacation was for me. I was always artistic and infatuated with animation. I remember the first time I saw an animated film and finding out, wow, how they did that. And for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be a cell painter. I'm like, I just want to paint cells,
How do you mean cells? What do you mean by cells?
So in traditional animation, the way that every frame was done was there was literally a cell, a piece of cell.
Oh, like storyboarding.
It's like a piece of plastic that then it's on a piece of film that the artists literally draw. At the time, it was all done. Now it's digital,
right.
But they would actually draw it on the film and then paint it on the film, and you paint it backwards, and then you put it under a camera and photograph it. And it's for every minute of animation, right? There's thousands of drawings that come to life. Whereas with technology today, computers are helping to do that, and certainly you're able to get kind of more realistic in the way that they're done. But I was just infatuated with that process, and I thought, oh man, I'd love to do that. And I remember at one point, I also love Peanuts and Charles. So I love Disney, but I also really love Charles Schultz and anything Peanuts. And I really loved Jim Davis, Garfield, forever. And I remember watching a special, I don't know if it was ABC or NBC, where they were talking about how they actually make animated films. And the cell painters were there, and I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. And the other thing for Disney is you've got these brands and these stories and these characters that they're easy to relate to as a kid, and they also give you that moment of escape where it's like, if you're having a bad day, and for me, if I'm having a bad day at work, I normally put on my Disney playlist and I'm jamming in my office to the
I do too. I have it saved. When you were a designer there, I know you mentioned with Debbie that you had worked on some of the merchandising in the park. You had to work in the park. That was part of which I hope they still do that. That's really
they do.
Oh, that's awesome. But how does that work? Because that's actually another one of my favorite parts of going there was kind of seeing the way the visual merchandising tied in, and it didn't seem like it was like this kind of whole just a cheap gift shop trying to make. I mean, they were so well thought out. You saw a mug and it was like, oh, it's $25. But then you looked at that mug like yeah, that's like worth $25 for that mug. It's beautiful.
Particularly if I designed it, it was definitely worth that. The way, and it's changed a little bit since I was there, but we had a division that was called Disney Design Group, and we were the team that was responsible to do all merchandise development for the theme parks. Right. Then there's the Consumer Products Group. They're doing a lot of the licensed work. They were out of Burbank. We were out of Florida. Right. We would do some things together, like synergistically, where it's like, oh, they're going to do something big for the Disney store, and we're going to do something similar in parks and resorts.
Right.
And so it worked that way, and very similar to the way, frankly, I designed for Hershey or chocolate. So much of it is based on trend, what's happening, in the marketplace, what are, what are socioeconomic kind of feelings going on in the world. Are people happy? Are people depressed? Are people,
right.
looking for nostalgia and warmth? And so we would do a lot of work around kind of mood, theme, trend, and then say, okay, well, how would those trends come to life through the lens of Disney? Or if it were, how would they come to life through a specific retail location? So if you're doing product development for the Jungle Cruise, for instance, and there's, a big kind of nostalgic theme, can you play that up in some of the way that you bring it to life? Or if travel and, experiencing the world, can you, tie that in? And I think you see a lot of that. I think Disney is probably one of the best, particularly from a parks and resort merchandise point of view, to your point. I never feel like I'm being sold to there. I feel like, I want that to remember this experience.
Yes, to commemorate such
exactly
a truly like a magical day.
So that's kind of the way it worked. But there were also the business side that was more about the procurement of the items and the forecasting of, well, how many of that mug will we sell? How do we order? But everything that we did. It was great for me because I did come from more of a traditional 2D print background.
Right. And
so I remember when I got the job, I was really nervous because it was the first time that I had worked three-dimensional in product development. And it's just a great experience because it opened my opportunities to working with different types of artists versus just graphic designers, so sculptors and painters and photographers and illustrators and everything that make what I do every day kind of come together. When I first got there, and I'm thrilled that they took a risk on me. It was a really great way to kind of round out my talent and what I was able to do. And then what made me, frankly, want to go and work for another massive consumer product company like, Procter and Gamble or the Hershey company.
This guy just setting up segues. I love it. They're the easiest guests ever. This is perfect. I love it.
But I don't know if I answered your question. I just,
it's okay. This is just a chill conversation. We talk about whatever. There's no.
If I could lift my monitor for you, you would see I've literally got a shrine to Disney, like either awards that I won while I was there. I'll show you. I'm going to stand up.
Yeah, go ahead. You can.
Or the belly. Like I spent a lot of time doing.
Wait, show the cufflinks while we're here. While we're on the subject, you got to show that the Kisses cufflinks.
So I've got these fabulous Kiss cufflinks. And on the back, they're a Hershey Pip.
Oh my God.
But when we did a redesign of the corporate brand, and the logo was a big part of that, and I had these made because I try to wear cufflinks every day.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of my favorite things I ever designed at Disney, because I am Haunted Mansion.
I'm so excited right now.
junkie. I love the Haunted Mansion.
Yes.
And I was able to, and I don't tell too many people this because I don't want to ruin any magic, but I was actually able to go into the Haunted Mansion before the park opened, and you're very supervised when that happens. So it's not, they're like, oh yeah, go in. And so you have a guard with you, but they turn the lights on because I was doing a commemorative pin that, I've got shade, it's like in this box here.
Oh my God.
But
so
I'm going to
cool.
open it. It's magic here. But it's Master Gracie. And he is, he sits above the fireplace.
The elevator, right?
Right before you get into the elevator. But what's really cool is he's a lenticular pin. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see kind of moving.
But he goes from, skull, skeleton to beautiful Master Gracie self. But anyway, this was like one of the a project that we had done for like a limited edition Haunted Mansion thing, and it's like a prized possession.
That is so
they only
cool.
made 999 of them because that's how many ghosts there are in the Haunted Mansion. 999. And we
might make this whole thing about Disney. I was like,
anyway, and you could actually find this on eBay. My niece will send me links. She's like, "Your pin's going for a killing."
Oh
but
my God.
Anyway, I love it.
That's so awesome.
But then I also did, I spent a lot of time at Disney designing pins, like collectible, flair. Exactly. And I dropped one. But going full circle, I just finished designing a massive set of pins for Hershey, because we're an official sponsor for the United States Olympics team, and
I've been
pins.
sharing everything. I've been a good friend. I've been sharing everything.
Cool.
It looks fantastic. I should add too. So.
Good.
I like the blue, like the blue wrapper with the white stars.
Isn't it awesome? I'm loving it. It's good.
See, like for me, it's like about the tiniest details there. All right, so 2003, 2004. That's 1 year, 2 months.
Yeah.
I should say that the reason I keep saying that is because Ron claims to not be good with dates. I doubt that, but you worked for Procter and Gamble, and you got to work on some a whole variety of different brands. Can you tell me a little bit about working at Procter and Gamble the first time and what that was like?
Yeah, sure. So I went to so I was with Disney, and I have to say, like, these are the moments as a designer where, if you hear my story, and it is very true, I wanted one thing in my life as an artist, and that was to work for Disney. It's all I ever wanted.
Right.
And then people are like, well, why did you leave? Right? And Debbie actually asked me.
I was wondering that myself. Yeah.
And it's like, I was stupid. I was young. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, I could make more money. I could have more responsibility. Right. But I have to say, authentically, I left Disney because Procter and Gamble had started really to build their design organization and design function in an amazing way. And it felt like this is an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of an organization that is recognizing the transformative power of design. And that sounds like a big, lofty thing, but it is.
No, they did. I'm familiar with the work. It's extraordinary, yeah.
And I think what was really amazing about the Procter piece for me was, from my agency experience, my Darden experience, my Disney experience, everything was all hands-on, doing the work. And Procter really was looking for design managers, but really strategic design leaders, and people who were thinking about more of the long-term health and equity of the brands, and then finding the best external partners to bring them to life. So it really opened my experience up to, instead of being in the agency, becoming the client for the agency, but also really looking at design very differently, really much more from the consumer psyche of, why a consumer buys what they want, why they want what they want, why they're attracted to something you're doing. And, what I love about my experience at Disney, and frankly, like, even as I look through my portfolio, I'm like, oh, I remember working on that. That was amazing, right? A lot of the Disney side is you have the benefit of these characters that are just so beloved, right? Mm-hmm. You also, particularly from a parks and resort side of thing, which was the group that I was in, you had the benefit of a captive audience, and that doesn't sound right, but you have people who've made the choice to go and invest and spend. They bought the ticket, they're there with their family, and they want to commemorate. When you're trying to sell a stick of deodorant in a Walmart or a Target or a drugstore, a lot of other stimulus is getting in the way. And particularly, if you're working on a brand so I had the absolute pleasure, it's one of my favorite experiences, was to work on Old Spice. And, and Old Spice, talk about scent and memory taking you back.
This is just to clarify, this is the first time, right?
My first time in Procter. I'll tell you that story. So yeah,
are you referring to like the new young Old Spice or the old classic Old Spice?
Because
I remember both.
I did the new cool Old Spice.
I love that campaign. I didn't know that. Sorry, I'm not as thorough as Debbie, but I love that campaign. That was unreal. I have some of it in my bathroom. It's all in there.
I'm wearing it today.
Which one do you wear?
I wear Swagger.
That one's good.
There's also one.
Matterhorn?
Matterhorn body wash I love.
Yes.
It's awesome. And it's also a little bit of a Disney thing because of the Matterhorn in...
You came up with that?
No, but I say it. Like, I love it. Disneyland Matterhorn, and then I lived in Switzerland with Procter Gamble and got to go to the Matterhorn. So it's one of the reasons I buy it. But Denali smells really good as well.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I worked on the redesign of Old Spice, and that was one where I felt a total sense of responsibility because it's a brand that I've grown up with. And when you talk about sensory, like the second I smell classic Old Spice, I go to my grandfather.
Me too. Me too. He used to wear it as well.
It's that porcelain buoy bottle is what it's called, with the the pintle with the star on the top. And I remember when I was working on it, you had Old Spice was actually in two different kind of camps. It was High Endurance and Red Zone were the two kind of sub brands for Old Spice.
I remember Red Zone. That smelled awful.
I won't tell you. But when I started on that, and you would talk to consumers, and what was also neat about that is typically the consumer, from a Procter and Gamble point of view, was a female, so this was a male consumer, but with a lot of buying by the girlfriend, the wife, the spouse, the mom,
right.
And so it was really cool to kind of learn a lot about that. We also sponsored NASCAR races. Tony Stewart was our driver.
Yeah, I'm a big NASCAR fan. That was another branding thing, yeah.
Wow. I went to more NASCAR races that I never in a million years thought I'd...
It does not line up with my politics. It makes no sense. I'm the only liberal at the NASCAR race, yeah.
But anyway, so I remember when we were working on the redesign, a lot of consumers would talk about, oh, I wear Red Zone. It's like, actually, you wear Old Spice. Or,
right.
Like, oh, yeah, I buy the High Endurance one. It's like, actually, you buy Old Spice. And, there was a lot of, as a brand, and I think maybe I talked a little bit about this with Debbie, but maybe not. There is this, first you have a brand like Old Spice, a brand like Olay, which I also worked on, which was also a dream brand for me to work on because I remember
iconic brand.
Oh my gosh, I'd go into my great grandmother's bedroom and that jar was on her dresser. That you just weren't allowed near it. Like get away from that. That's like her special stuff. And so to work on those, you have this responsibility of like, wow, these iconic brands. But then you also have, hey, the consumer's changing. A lot of consumers we would talk to would say, yeah, my dad wore Old Spice, or it reminds me of my grandfather, or with Olay, it reminds me of my grandmother. And I think what Old Spice did brilliantly, and I can take credit for leading, the design portion of that work. We had worked with Wyden and Kennedy for the advertising and communication, and I had worked with Landor in Cincinnati.
Wyden and Kennedy did the commercials of it, right?
Right, and really, they're...
See, I know what I'm talking about.
yeah, you too, man. They're awesome. They're a great group of people.
Yeah, fantastic.
But they kept, we'd be sitting through this in the research, and it was like, gosh, we were trying really hard to think about, okay, how do we get the guy to stop thinking about Old Spice as his dad's or his grandfather's and make him think of it as his? And I thought, what was really breakthrough in the work was this idea of, it was a little dirty for Procter, at least at the time, but, this idea of, you wouldn't be here if your dad didn't wear Old Spice. Right. And there was that kind of like, there's something really cool about this brand. And so you should celebrate and you should be thrilled that it's still here for you. And they did a great job with that. And I mean, what a transformation for a brand, particularly, the category was growing in a way that was really more about, sex, and if I wear this fragrance, all the girls are going to be all over me. And this was just more of an approach.
It started with Axe, right? Was that kind of they were the first company to really do that?
They were really the ones to do the that more sexual attraction side of things. And so, for Old Spice to really take the stand on confidence, your own confidence, and not you need somebody else to make you feel confident. It just helped the design journey. But I remember as we were trying to do the work, Landor and I would consistently go into meetings with like, hey, let's go back through the archives, look at this amazing design work that was there.
Right.
The Old Spice script, which, I'm a typography junkie, by the way.
Same here.
The Old Spice script is like, it's so iconic. I could still draw it right now if I wanted to.
Right.
We had gone away from that. And if you looked at like Old Spice High Endurance and Old Spice Red Zone, it had gotten a little bit more, it was more modern. And I totally get all the reasons probably why it went there in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
But going back to kind of the roots and the heritage, particularly with the communication, story that Wyden was telling, made a lot of sense. But one of the things that I love more than anything on the Old Spice original fragrance, the top of the pack, it's the stopper of the fragrance.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what that looked like as you're talking.
It's like this gray. It's like a gray plunger, but the top of it has a star debossed in the top of it.
Yeah.
You look at it, it's it's a six-sided shape, and I don't know, I decided I was going to make a graphic of that, and I wore that on my T-shirt for this meeting where I was pitching the redesign to like our
only you, Ron, only you.
Our business, we called them business franchise leaders, who I love, by the way. This woman was awesome. She took a lot of risks with design. Anyway, so I wore this. I wore what was the top of the fragrance bottle on my shirt. That actually became the badge of the Old Spice logo that as it sits today. So it sits in that in the shape with the Old Spice script and the ship. And I think one of the things, it kind of became my trick at Procter. I would bring things back. So like I brought, I'm like, I'm so proud I brought that clipper ship back because it had moved to a schooner and a yacht on high endurance and red zone.
Yeah.
I'm like, that awesome pirate ship, man.
Yeah. So now it's still the original? It's just integrated into new. Wow.
Yeah, it is. It's in the new, and it's funny because I still, even though I haven't worked on that brand, I haven't worked on Old Spice. Wow, it's definitely over.
Here we go. The times.
I don't know. I'm bad with timelines. I'd say it was like a couple months ago. Yeah. With Procter, for me, it was like this, just a different side of the design business, and really seeing how design could be, and should be, and in companies that are doing it really well. Really a competitive advantage. And, Procter had brought in a new design leader, Claudia Kochka, who actually came from the marketing side. So what was really great is she bridged that gap between, the creative side and the business side of design. And she really helped, establish the role and frankly what design is at Procter, today.
Right.
So getting in there for me was, I wanted that so badly.
Yeah.
And it was also one of the first times that I had ever been recruited, right? So I had always been the one who I'm like, I'm going to find this job and I want to get it. Yeah. And so, when I had the opportunity to go to Procter, I was thrilled. I was excited. I have to say my original, and so you'll note that there was a 1-year stint with Procter.
Right.
My original interview, I thought I was going to, I interviewed in beauty, I interviewed in baby, and I thought, I'm coming from Disney where I did a lot of work, princesses, and I did, of course, baby and Disney.
Yeah.
And my first job at Procter was on dish care. And so Dawn and Ivory, which was amazing to work on a classic brand like Ivory and Dawn as well. So I did dish care for them for a year.
Right.
And I didn't love it. I wasn't sure if I didn't really love it. I think a big part for me was the culture shock of I got everything I thought I wanted, which was, okay, I don't want to do the hands-on stuff anymore. I want to really go into more creative direction and leadership.
Right.
And I missed it. And so I got a phone call for a company called Cranium out in Seattle. And they were an awesome company that made games. They had an amazing relationship with Starbucks that kind of put them on the map. And, they definitely had like that little engine that could kind of story. They kept trying to sell that game to, toy store chains and department stores, and it didn't happen because they had the buying season wrong, like when people were buying. So I left Procter to go to Cranium, and Cranium was amazing. It was in Seattle, which remains one of my favorite places that I've ever lived. I think I like water. I was born and raised in Florida, Seattle. They had lots of water. Lots of rain. There we go.
Yeah.
So I went to Cranium, and I left Procter after a year. And I remember, when I left Procter, I had made these great relationships. And, I just remember some of the things that I did that I never really had a chance to do in my career, whether that was sit through consumer research, talk to consumers about design, work with these, massive agencies that, you hear about as designers, but you're like, who really is working, with them? And so it was amazing.
Right.
And what was really exciting for me about Cranium is it was going to lead design for the organization. They didn't have an internal design group, and it was a nice mix of, okay, I was doing some of the hands-on. I was also building the team creatively, and their trajectory was just, they had plans to explode.
Right.
The world. So they were sold to Hasbro, a game company, another toy.
Which is the people you want to be bought by if you're a game company.
Right. I mean, if you're a toy and game company, right? And so when that happened, it was like this, okay, well, what do I do? And I stayed in touch with people at Procter. I had a job offer from another company that I really, was also on my bucket list of where I wanted to work. And I went back, it was a very casual, I was going to be in Cincinnati for the holidays, and my one of my contacts at Procter said, oh, just come and have coffee with me, whatever. And I ended up leaving the coffee like, yeah, I'm going to come back and work here. And so I had an opportunity to go back to Procter for a second time. When I left the first time, they told me no one ever leaves Procter twice, meaning once you leave, you're out. So I was excited that they brought me back, and I was able to go into beauty, which is really where I wanted to be.
And
I had
Switzerland, right?
What's that?
That's in Switzerland?
Well, I came back to Cincinnati for the first part of it, and that's when I did Old Spice, Secret. Then we had acquired Gillette, the amazing shave care company, and I was able to work on the redesign of Gillette, which was incredible.
Beautiful. I love that.
Work. And then
I'm a Patriots fan, so the Gillette is prominently
everywhere.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed one of those moments, and on that work I had worked with an agency partner, LPK. Also, they're in Cincinnati as well, a great group. But it was one of those very smart moments where, as the work was coming in, there was number one always on the page was like, okay, what are we doing with the logo, right? I mean, there's always that, can we touch it? And I remember on the Gillette stuff, it's like, don't touch the logo, don't touch the logo. Right. And this designer came back and changed the dot of the eye. It was literally, it was Futura, it was the face, but, it just has that beautiful round dot. Right. And he changed it to a chisel and a blade. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the smartest thing I've ever seen. And I remember actually going into our business franchise leader at the time, like, oh, he's going to kill me. Because number one thing said, don't touch the logo. And the first thing that we're saying is, oh, we want to change it. But anyway, so I worked on Gillette. Then I worked on Olay, which that truly was my dream. And to your point on global brands, Olay was so fun and complex at the same time because the brand means very different things in different parts of the world. So, in the US, it's a great high quality mainstream skincare brand. But if you go to Japan and China, it's a prestige counter brand like you would go and purchase at a department store. Right. So, creating design systems that work from, for a shelf at Walmart all the way to, like a high-end department store in Japan was a huge challenge and a ton of fun. And I loved it. And I really got to travel the world because of Olay and Gillette. And then I went from that business to hair care. And I had Pantene Head and Shoulders and Herbal Essences. And that's when I had the opportunity to live in Geneva, Switzerland. And I did that for 2 years for Procter, which was awesome. Pantene, like all three of those brands, like are brand. Oh my God, I'd kill the
That's why when I heard that podcast with Debbie, I was like, I gotta meet this guy, man. Like, I gotta find out. Great.
I had an awesome time doing that. And then I heard from the Hershey company, and I had no intention of leaving Procter. I had no intention of leaving Geneva, Switzerland. And I thought, with Hershey, wow, I've got this kind of
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
That confuses me.
It's a magical place. It's magical. It smells like chocolate. Yeah. But and it does, really. But for me, the magic, of Hershey was I kind of compare it to like if Procter and Disney were to become one company, that's Hershey. So I have the a magic, like the iconic brands that I had at Procter, and of course Disney being an iconic brand, but you have really emotional stories attached to the brands, where I do think Procter's mission about, touching and improving lives, absolutely. When you talk to somebody about the first time somebody gave them a Hershey kiss, and they think about opening that wrapper and how special it was. And if you think of the first time someone, shared one with you or broke a bar or made s'mores, the first time I had a Hershey's bar, I remember, my mom would buy a bar for my sister and I to share with her in the car ride on the way home from the store. I remember opening the paper. I remember taking the foil off and breaking it and eating it. That's amazing when, not only is your brand serving a functional purpose, but also has these, very emotional connections as well. And so to me, that was really the magic of Hershey. And, coming here, as I thought about the portfolio of brands that I had an opportunity to work on, and then also the fact that, design was a very new organization and function for the Hershey Company. So prior to my arrival, there was somebody that was in the role for about 5 years. And so it's a relatively new function. If you think of, kind of where we are today in 2016, we're now I've dated the blog for, sorry. 2016, to say design's really only been a part of this organization for 8 years. I mean, I joke, there's been a lot of design at the Hershey Company for well over 100 years, right? Yeah. So what's exciting for me, and I know what was exciting for my predecessor, is really helping the organization and the company and our retail partners understand the value and the power of design and what it could bring. And so, while I loved everything I was doing at Procter, design really had made its presence known. And that was amazing. And, really I wanted to say, okay, hey, I want to help make design part of the Hershey legacy, and know that I'm part of that. And we all really feel this responsibility to first, uphold the heritage that Milton Hershey started and that history and the tradition. And I mean, it's one of those things when you come into the town of Hershey, Pennsylvania, and the streetlights are lined with Hershey Kisses, and the town smells like chocolate, and you drive by the Reese's plant.
I'm so excited.
Like of that, oh my gosh, this is a huge responsibility.
It's an icon, it really is.
It is.
Just as much as Disney or any of the other ones. Even more so in a way, too. I mean, it's like it hasn't changed, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously, the brand has evolved, but has the color brown changed over the years, or has it always been the same color?
It is Munsell Maroon, so it's a specific a specific brown that we use. And it's, brown that we have protection around. And it's, it is something that, it's what's interesting about it is it's super hard to print. And everybody that we talk to, they're like, oh my gosh, let's just pick a Pantone here and make one's life easier.
That's funny.
It is a tough color to get right. It could end up being like overly, pink and red. It could be overly,
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow.
But anyway, so that color has been consistent, since the invention of the Hershey's milk chocolate bar. It's been used, and we've preserved it. What I think we've done in a really nice way over the past, a couple of years is modernized it in ways that, harken back to that heritage, but also feel very fresh and new. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity. I just gave my last sample. I'm going to check if it's here. We just did an amazing update for our U.S. Olympic partnership, the United States Olympics Committee, Team USA partnership, and Go USA. Signed some amazing athletes to be sponsors with us. But what's incredible, I've really that package as you know it today, the Munsell Maroon, big bold Hershey's letters.
Right.
All we did was change them to red, white, and blue, and it
oh yeah, I saw it's the Twitter thing, right?
Patriotic Americana. Oh my God! And I worked on that project with an amazing agency in Cincinnati called Go Dutch. And when they presented that, I'm like, gosh, could it really be this easy? Is that really the solution? And we did rounds of okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, and in the end, we went back to that. And the response has been amazing.
I saw it. Yeah, it's awesome. Go Dutch. They did work with you on the rebrand of the Hershey's and Jet too, right?
They did.
I'm telling you, I'm well read on the world of Ron Burrage.
They're I have a lot of, I think I have a lot of secret weapons as a design leader.
Yeah.
My team, my agency partners, Go Dutch is definitely top on that secret weapon list. But anyway, they're amazing. So, but they did the rebrand. But what was amazing for me, I had the opportunity to meet Shannon Miller, who of course is, a gold medalist gymnast.
Right.
And she is one of our athletes that we sponsor. And she was at the unveiling of, the relationship between Hershey and the USOC and Team USA, and she just held on to that package. She's like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful!" She's like holding it up to her face. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I need to go stand in a corner somewhere. Yeah. But
that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. But no, it is like this. I do think there's a responsibility, and I also think that as a company and as a brand, we want to be relevant for new consumers, and the people who have never experienced a Hershey bar maybe the way that you and I did, where it was peel the paper wrapper, then peel the foil. That means something to me. It doesn't mean the same thing to somebody who's just visiting the U.S. and never experienced Hershey's milk chocolate.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that when they're experiencing the brand, they feel like it's their brand as well, even if they didn't have the 100 years of heritage to go along with it. And so it's a big responsibility, as we think of these key iconic brands. And the great thing about the Hershey Company is we're building our portfolio of brands beyond what of Hershey's milk chocolate or Hershey's Kisses,
right.
And bringing in new amazing brands like Crave Jerky, which if you haven't had, pretty awesome. Bark Thins has just joined our family, and we're inventing and creating new brands and hopefully building the next iconic brands. So, when kids today go, when their kids are having the brand that we just created today, like that brand's 100 years old.
Right. They're all like different like Twitter accounts and stuff like that. So do you treat it in the same way an agency would you're on like Team Tide or you're on Team, is it the same thing?
Yeah, very similar. We have core groups of people who work on the brands full time. That's what they do. Right. And then we have teams of people who either float in multifunctionally. So design happens to be one of the organizations within the Hershey Company that works across all brands. So I have design managers on my team that are assigned Reese's, Seasons, and
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. I'm here. If you guys need a freelancer, I'm coming down. Whoever I gotta get that LinkedIn Reese's Peanut Butter Cup connection.
They are absolutely my weakness. And if you haven't seen, there's a new fun campaign right now called Cup Fusion, where Reese's Pieces are inside a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, and it's so good, it's so wrong. They're really good.
Can I just say, while I'm thinking of it, ADD here, but please bring back. It will be the most successful campaign you guys have had in forever. If you haven't already, if you've already done this, forgive me.
Okay.
How X eats a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Bring that back. That was the best. You guys could have, for years. Why did that stop?
We're keeping it fresh, but you could start that again, Rob. Do it.
Did I do it?
And we'll retweet it. I'll post it.
Okay, I got to think of some inventive ways to eat some peanut butter cups.
There's some fun stuff. In fact, we just won a Lion Award at Cannes for a Reese campaign in the digital space, where I don't know if you saw some consumers at the holidays, they didn't think their trees looked like trees,
right.
And then they didn't think the hearts looked like hearts at Valentine's Day, and we did, I think, some awesome real-time kind of response called "All Trees Are Beautiful."
Right.
And really what is pretty amazing is the trees haven't changed since we made them in the beginning, but it wasn't until Twitter and people actually started saying, hey, this doesn't look like a tree.
Right.
And I think we responded to that in really the way that Reese's would respond. And I think that's what's important, to your point. While, we have over 80 brands in our portfolio, every brand has a different tone of voice. And the way Reese's would respond to All Trees Are Beautiful certainly would be different than the way Kisses would respond, or the way Twizzlers might respond. So it is important, and to me, what I love about the challenge here is, I have a relatively small team of designers, all who know enough about each other's brands, but then really who dive into, I've got an amazing design leader on Reese's. She can tell you anything about Reese's ever, and I'll say, Faye, I've got this great idea for Reese's. And she's like, oh, Ron, they tried that in 1974. So you want them to bring that one back. I want them to bring the Elvis Reese's peanut butter cup back, which was peanut butter banana.
That sounds good.
King loved, his peanut butter and banana.
Are you guys going to roll out the Kisses bells again this year?
Every year.
It was kind of low resolution last year. Right? Was that just the TV I was watching on?
I hope it was your TV.
I don't know. You probably look into that. But,
it's funny. We've tried to remake that commercial for many, many years, and nothing scores as well as that commercial with consumers. They know it. They know when they hear the bells ringing that it's the Kiss, and it's amazing. It's that one, and that's a great one for us in terms of brand recall and an iconic asset.
I got excited. That and the Hess truck.
The Hess truck's back.
Yeah, that's right up there though. That's if you were to ask consumers, that's probably one of the most memorable Christmas ones.
Yeah, for sure.
There's another one you said.
For Easter, we have the for Cadbury cream eggs, the bunny auditions, where audition to be the Cadbury bunny, and
my mom's gonna be so excited. She's a huge Cadbury egg person, so she's like, "You talk to the guy? What?" Yeah,
I love Cadbury.
I made it, Mom. I made it.
As we think about, on the flip side, because I do talk about the responsibility of these iconic brands, I also think we have responsibility, as designers to push the thinking and the change and the perception that consumers may have for these iconic brands. But in particular, for me, the biggest challenge is the perception internally, within the organization on A, what design can deliver, on B, what will the consumer allow us to do with these brands, to ultimately get them or maintain that iconic status that they have. So, that I don't think it's a responsibility where, yes, I'm stewarding these iconic brands, and that means don't touch them, right? It's how do you keep the essence and the core and what is the brand, but also make it, relevant for people who don't know the brands or maybe don't think about the brand when they're thinking about, I want to go get a great piece of chocolate. Right. When the Hershey company did our rebrand, I got some really not happy press.
I purposely left that out because I wholeheartedly disagree with the
so do I.
Brand new under consideration thing, and I know that Debbie had talked about that too. So it's frowned upon to steal other podcast hosts' questions. Sorry if I did, Debbie. At any point.
No, not at all. But it's one of those things where, for me, it was a reaction that I didn't expect. But then I think of, frankly, a lot of the conversations that had happened in the design space, whether that was, around the Airbnb logo, and wow, how awesome that they stuck with the belief, like, hey, we did the right thing. Right. But then you look at companies who did, and I hate to say, but like that knee-jerk reaction of like, wow, Gap put a new logo out there and consumers didn't like it, and it was like, oh, we're back to the old logo. And
was it a week, right? Was it a week, a month?
I don't even think it was. It was. I felt so bad for them, man. Like, oh God, I would. And that was at a time where I'm like, that'll never happen to me. But it's one of those things where I think, in particular, we have to. I'm thrilled. I had the opportunity to speak at a How conference a couple of years ago, and it was right after the whole thing with the logo happened.
The Hullabaloo.
The Hullabaloo, which was a Disney, or I'm sorry, which was a Cranium game that I sang the theme song for it. If you find it online, go watch the Hullabaloo commercial. I tricked my CFO. I'm also a singer, and
yeah, an actor too. Yeah.
But I tricked my CFO because he didn't like the voices that were coming in the auditions. And so I went and recorded it one afternoon, and we played it, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. And then we're like, oh, that was me. But anyway, that was fun. Anyway, Hullabaloo. But no, I think, the thing that I was very proud of with Hershey, frankly, I'd only been with the company but when that happened, a few months, and I thought I was going to get the call, like, hey, we're back to the old logo. And I was thrilled that they stood behind it. And
so cool.
In really a great way. It's one of those things where I'm like, that's what I want to do for someone on my team, at some point.
Yeah.
But
was that like a panic attack day?
Man, Rob, I'll tell you, I was in Vegas. We had just opened our
what an awful place to be.
And I knew, it was one of I'm laying in bed knowing that article is going to run because I submitted all of the content and stuff. And I knew that article was going to run. I'm in bed. And I woke up because the time zone difference. So I wanted to see, when it posted. And I honestly in my head thought, oh yeah, that's going to post today and it won't be a big deal. And they had run a story of when I did the redesign of Olay. And for the most part, it was, people liked it. You had a couple of snarky comments, but man,
the douchiest comments, excuse my French, but I love Under Consideration. I love the people who publish Under Consideration. I've read every single article, but all of those people in the comment section, you're the worst people. I'm sure there are some people who comment with clever things, but there's some really, really. I think I was talking with Jessica Helpin about this, about just comments that you'd lose your job for if they were ever said in the professional setting. They should really be ashamed of themselves, and they're showing how sorry, I'm gonna vent about this. I hope these people hear it. Get at me. Here's the comment section right here. No, but they should be ashamed of themselves because it's like, oh, you're so hoity-toity and you're all about design, yet steaming turd. That's your creative critique. Whatever. I'll stand by your side, Ron. I'll get at it.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I'm gonna grab it because I'm so proud of it. Here, I'm gonna hide you all can call me or write me, but there it is, the amazing logo.
Beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? And check out these business cards. I actually have these done on Moo. I love Moo. We have an internal print shop that's awesome, but I did these awesome foil things. You can see all the kisses.
I saw that.
But I think importantly, when I was asked to do the How thing, man, I was really excited and honored, but also I haven't really talked publicly since this whole thing happened. And the original title of my presentation was Haters Gonna Hate and Other Things I Learned from Taylor Swift. But I don't know. I got kind of, I got a little, I thought, I didn't want it to be like that. I didn't want it to come across that I was bitter about what happened, but I do think, the reality, particularly, and I've been now doing this for over 20 years. People have loved my work, people have hated my work, and all shades in between. But I think for new designers, thank you. I think for new designers, it could be career changing. It could be like, wow, I love to act, right? 99% of the auditions I go to, I don't get the job, right? Yeah. And, if I'm a designer just either coming out of school or I'm a designer who, just did what they thought was the right thing and it wasn't successful, people change careers over things like that, right? And I just think we have to be, this sounds cheesy, we have to be nice to each other, right? I mean, we're in this together. I know I come to work every day and I am trying at the Hershey Company, an amazing company. I say that, but I will say this, a company where every day I'm trying to prove the value of design and what design means to the bottom line as it relates to emotional connections consumers have with our brands, as it relates to impulse purchases, and for our own industry to say, yeah, that looks like a steaming turd.
Yeah.
Wow, come on, people, be nice. I mean, clearly stuff that I'm like, I wouldn't have done it, but I don't go out of my way to say, well, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. What were you thinking?
Right.
You know, but it's funny, the agency who did the work, Go Dutch, they were getting like
I'm so impressed I knew that, by the way. I'm really proud of myself.
As well. I am too. In fact, I have a call with them later. I'll tell them. But they had said they got so many emails about it, and they're like, "Hey, how much will you charge me to design? You know, fill in the blank or fill it." They were getting harassed, and I felt worse for them really more than anything. And I also had just joined the company, so I thought for sure I was going to get fired. So I'm still here. I wasn't.
No. So you're looking good. You got the cufflinks on.
Got the links.
If you, what should people look for when looking for these design jobs? Because I've seen such radical extremes. On the one hand, you know, like when I went to the Collins office, I was like, oh my God, places like this exist. These are not just places, you know, there's Eames chairs, it's beautiful, there's like libraries, and everyone there is so kind, and you know, they're like sharing books with you and sharing information. And then there's other offices which are like cold corporate dungeons of just like, old school thinking and presentation decks and all that awful stuff. Sorry for anyone who's presentation decks. Keep rocking. I want to work at a place where design is encouraged, and I understand that I'm not going to always be in a place where I can do whatever I want. Does that exist? Are there places where you can go and it's just like this euphoric experience of like learning and design and color? Because you worked at Disney, you worked at Hershey, you worked at all these places. I just want to know that it's going to take time to get there, but when I get to where I'm going, like, what's it like when you get to work, you know, these dream jobs?
You know, I have to say, Rob, like, I think it's taken now 20 years to recognize it and be okay with the fact that there are days when I walk into work and I truly am like, I have the best job in the world. And that has been true no matter where I worked, whether it was at Disney, whether it was at, you know, a small agency in South Florida, Olive Garden. And then there are also days when you walk in and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Right. Yeah. So you have that. I think, you know, for me, what's exciting is the things that stress me out. I don't know if stress out is the right word, or the things that kind of irk me about, like, wow, I shouldn't have to be telling somebody why I chose a typeface for this, right? Like, you know, or why I'm insisting on hand lettering something instead. But, you know, I think a lot of it, you have to, you know, first recognize every organization is at a different stage of the design journey, and every person that you work with is, right? So there are some brand managers that I work with that honestly, I'm like, I have an open design job. Please apply. Come work with me. They really get it. And then there are other people that, you know, they don't. And it's not that they don't. I will say, at least at Hershey, I don't believe it's ever about bad intention. I think it's just about, you know, for so many people, what we do, it appears fun, and it appears like anyone could do that, right? I mean, how hard is it to...
Which is definitely not the case. I've learned that very quickly.
And so I think that, you know, you have to be patient in your journey of, okay, who am I going to bring under my wing, right? And help them understand, like, you know, I often joke with... I joke with our brand partners here, you know, where I'm like, hey, if I do my job, you are going to be the next CEO of the Hershey company. I won't be. You will be. But let me do my job. If you're going to fight it every step of the way, there's somebody else who wants to be the CEO. And it's more of, you know, I believe in going, you know, go where the suction is. Go and work with the people who want my time and my team's time and are, you know, like, I love when we're in town halls and a brand person would say, oh my God, I would never have been able to do this if it weren't for, you know, the design team and what they've delivered. That's amazing. And, you know, they're getting a heck of a lot further, right, in their career and in their development by recognizing, you know, the fact that they're not doing this stuff as islands, right? And so I think you have that. I think the, you know, question that I would kind of put out there is, or my revelation is, I've always known when I walk into an interview immediately, is this place right for me? And I would say go with your gut, because it's rarely wrong.
Yeah.
there have been jobs that don't show up on my resume that I thought this is going to be amazing, and it was like, oh wow, this is for me. And so don't no experience. I really do believe no experience is bad experience, particularly as you're looking for your first jobs, right? There's a lot of stuff that I did when I was at the agency that I'm like, yeah, that's probably not a client I would have sought out, but it's one the agency brought in. And, as the new designer on the team, I definitely wasn't getting the choice projects. I mean, and this would happen a lot, at Disney where, we were getting like anywhere from 60 to 100
aristocrats while your partners were getting
right.
I love the aristocrats.
Sit there with the work and like all these things handed out, and I'm like, how did I get stuck doing that hang tag for a tank top that I didn't design? Like, what am I doing? But so you have to recognize you're going to get some of that, but there are also some of the things where it's like, oh, that was fun. I mean, the time that I spent doing pins at Disney, man, that blinds you. You're working in these like little minuscule things. I'm like, wow, man, I'm like doing all these pins all the time. And I'm looking at my, some colleagues getting these amazing, like, portfolio projects.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun, and I look at it and I'm like, they're also mad at every client. They're not having a good time. So I would say go with your gut, the sense, the feel of the place. And I'd also, I wouldn't be scared about doing, particularly as you're starting out, right? Like, if I read my resume and I were Disney, right? If I were Disney reading my resume as I was sending it in, I would have never called me for an interview.
Yeah.
I have to say the connections are everything, and you'll work on I never thought I'd be working in, the food industry with frankly Olive Garden. I'm like, okay, that was kind of weird. I never expected that.
Right.
But at the same time, I never thought I'd be working on detergent, on skincare, on hair care, on chocolate. I worked at the agency. A lot of what we did was healthcare. I was like illustrating knee braces for like catalogs. It's like, there's like a mix of kind of crazy.
Great with the pen tool, I'm sure.
You just got to do it,
Yeah.
And then hopefully at some point you'll be like, that's the job. That's the job I want.
Yeah.
And I want to go and do that every day. And and I want to do it even when I don't have to do it anymore.
Right. All right, Ron. So in closing, I just have one more thing I want to talk to you about. Prism, which is part of the Hershey's chocolate for supporting the LGBT community. I think it's important, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I am a co-lead of Prism. It's our LGBTQ and ally affinity group at the company, and really our role is to build awareness within the organization around issues the LGBTQ community is facing, whether that's about workplace equality, whether that's about financial equality, whether that's about offering benefits to same-sex partners or benefits, for individuals going through transition that are transgender. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of at the Hershey Company. I mean, we are an amazing organization. Milton Hershey really built a foundation around giving back and philanthropy. The Milton Hershey School is a great example of that. But we also have a reputation of being conservative, and I think this is a space that really does show that the company is looking to build the most diverse workforce and bring in the best talent, regardless of regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race, regardless of culture and religion and experience, and really just about making the company the best place it could be for everybody to show up fully with their talent. So Prism is kind of like my side job at the company. But it's one that I'm really passionate about, particularly as a member of the LGBTQ community. And so there's a lot of work ahead. I think we're making great progress, certainly as the Hershey Company, but also I think as the community in general. So
that's so awesome, and that's got to be so cool to be a part of. And I think with the recent events in the news recently, and I feel like. At times I feel like there's so much more to go, but it's so great that companies like Hershey could do something like that. Because there needs to be more love and compassion in the world. And I watch the news every day, and I'm baffled at the way that the LGBT community is treated. And so it's I bravo to Hershey for partaking in that.
Shouldn't be an issue.
It really shouldn't.
it's one of those things that, in today's world, and certainly as we think about, talent and diversity, and the fact that the world consumer is our consumer at Hershey, and that includes anybody who enjoys chocolate.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of members of the LGBTQ community who do. So I'm one of, and so I'm thrilled that the company supports it the way that it does. Actually, if you're in the area on July 29th, the Kiss Mobile is going to be at Central PA Pride. I'll be there handing out rainbow-colored kisses, and it's actually a lot of local companies in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania. It's our Pride celebration. It just happens in July instead of June.
That's when I think I'm gonna have to set up our hangout date. Is that day? So. Ron, thanks so much for coming on. This has been awesome. This has been so much fun. I can't wait to share this with everyone. So thank you so much.
Thanks.